Join ForumIAS Academy, trusted by hundreds of toppers, including IAS Rank 1 Shruti Sharma.
Hi, my name is Krishnan. Today I'll be doing the Hindu news analysis. These are the 5 articles that will be discussed today, and towards the end we'll see previous year questions. So the first article for the day will be about constitutional benches. So why it is in news? Because the Chief Justice of India has said new constitution bench will be starting by July 12, and who is leading it? It will be led by Chief Justice of India, Chandrachud. So right now they have taken a summer break, and the Supreme Court will reopen on July 3rd. From then on, this constitutional hearing will start. So who are the other judges? So these are the other 4 judges, and the first case will be about whether the state can change eligibility rules for an exam for public employment during the process itself. So this is the first case that they will be taking, but this is not important. In this article we should see what is constitution bench, how it came into picture, and what are the formalities involved in it. So first, what we should know what is the constitution bench of Supreme Court. So constitution bench means if the bench has more than 5 or more judges, then it is constitution benches. Because why? These are not routine phenomena, so this does not happen very often. Because why? Because majority of the cases are decided by a bench of 2 judges, that is called divisional bench, and sometimes 3. So how can a constitutional bench come into existence? It comes from Article 145 clause 3. So that says the minimum number of judges were to sit for the purpose of deciding any case involving a substantial question of law. So for that, a constitutional bench can be set up. So they are telling to the interpretation of the constitution. So first what they are telling, constitutional bench can be set up if the case involves a substantial question of law. So this is very important keyword for your GS2 mains. To the interpretation of the constitution, or for any hearing which has been referenced to the Supreme Court by the President. So that is Article 143. I hope you know what Article 143 is. So Article 143 is when the President seeks the Supreme Court opinion under Article 143 of the Constitution. So why President does this? Because he has the power to address certain questions to Supreme Court. What type of cases he can refer? Those cases which he thinks are very important for public welfare, those questions he can send it to the Supreme Court and ask for their opinion. However, the answer that is, or the advice that is given by the Supreme Court to the President is not binding on the President, nor is it a law declared by the Supreme Court. So this is very important. And what are the other instances they'll have constitutional bench? When 2 or 3 judges of the same bench are delivering conflict judgments on the same point of law. So then the Chief Justice will think, no, this case involves a much more a wider interpretation. Then what he'll do? Then he'll refer it to the larger bench. So right now there are no permanent benches. Benches are set up on ad hoc basis based on conditions. But right now what the Chief Justice of India is telling, he's telling he wants a permanent constitutional bench. So this ad hoc is not working, so he's telling we want permanent bench. So what they'll do, they'll identify here and provide relief in case which needs urgent attention. So that is why it is important, no? Because generally what happens, litigants and lawyers, when they are involved, there is delay, and the Supreme Court the register has to approve. So it's a very long process. Then what the Chief Justice is telling, we should go with this a permanent constitutional bench, because right now pendency has crossed 71,000. So in 2017 the number of pending cases were 55,000 only, but suddenly it has shot up to 71,000. And all these are happening in spite of the fact that the sanction strength of the Supreme Court has been increased to 34. Earlier it was a bit low, but now they have increased. In spite of that, pendency is increasing. So while concluding this answer, you can tell constitutional benches are very necessary because they help us establish clear precedent, and a large number of cases are dismissed through written orders without hearing by the Supreme Court. So we need long term, we need permanent constitutional benches so that a lot of cases will be heard and the constitutional validity of it will be established. So this is how, so this is what this article is about. Now let us move on to the next topic. This topic is about extremes in temperature in Indian cities. So what has happened in the year 2023? In June, we see there is like extreme change in temperatures. So the first half of June was extremely hot, and then it suddenly became extremely cold. So we'll analyze the temperature of different cities in this article. So Chennai and Chandigarh witnessed the lowest ever maximum temperatures recorded on a June day. So this is happening after 70 years. And you see, in Trivandrum, it was the hottest June day. So in Chennai, it was the lowest ever maximum, and at the same time in Trivandrum, it is the hottest June day. So this shows, how global warming is messing up things around. So what was the lowest ever maximum temperature in Chennai? So on June 19, it was just 28.2 degrees Celsius. So this was because of it received huge rainfall on that day. So the data was sourced from the Nungambakam station, and within 24-hour period, 80 mm rainfall, and on the next day it got 50 millimeter rainfall in the next 24 years. But what is very strange is that on June 3rd, the temperature was 42.7 degrees Celsius. So this was the third highest maximum temperature for the city on a June day. So what happened? And then immediately it rained because in June it will not rain in Chennai. But then what happened? The temperature cooled down rapidly, and then it became the lowest ever maximum temperature. So this data is helping us analyze how global warming is changing cities' temperature. So same thing has happened for Bengaluru, Jaipur, Delhi, and Dehradun, because they also recorded many of their lowest maximum readings. And Jaipur had 30 degree and 31.4 degrees Celsius on June 18 and 19. That is because of cyclone Biparjoy. And Sunday again, Jaipur recorded lowest maximum temperature of 30.6 degrees Celsius. So right now in Delhi, there is southwest monsoon rainfall. So it got 34.1 millimeter rainfall, and Dehradun got 76.3 millimeter rainfall. So both these things brought the temperature down, and this is also one of the lowest temperatures in June. So Delhi recorded the second lowest maximum temperature of 28.5 degrees Celsius, and Dehradun recorded a temperature of 22.8 degrees Celsius. This is also very low for Dehradun standards. And even Chandigarh's maximum temperature dropped to 26.3 degrees Celsius. So if we contrast this, Thiruvananthapuram, which is in the south like Chennai, it saw its hottest June day on June 15, which was 34.5 degrees Celsius. So, and on June 2nd, it recorded 34.4 degrees Celsius. It is the second hottest day in 70 years in Thiruvananthapuram. So, and the maximum temperature in the city crossed 30 degrees Celsius mark on all days of June, which is a very rare thing, but it is happening in Thiruvananthapuram. So same thing happened in Panaji, Bhubaneswar, Patna, Amravati, and Mumbai too. What happened is they had one of the hottest day, and what is happening in eastern and central states, there is heat waves. So, but maximum temperature was in Lucknow and Ranchi, and in Patna the temperature was not that high, but still in Lucknow and Ranchi the temperature went up to 42.4 degrees Celsius on June 7, which is the highest in the last 10 years. And even Andhra Pradesh capital Amravati recorded a relatively hot June, and the temperature on most days went past 38 degree Celsius mark. So how are the conclusions arrived upon? The conclusions are based on IMD's gridded maximum temperature database. So what they'll do, it is based on 550 measuring stations which record the daily surface air temperature. So what they'll do, the temperature measurements are put in the gridded database, and the weighted average of 4 to 10 nearest station is taken. So for example, let's say the maximum temperature of Nungambakam is taken as Chennai's figures. But what in the gridded database, what they will do, the average temperature of a station nearer to Chennai will also be considered. So the number of stations that will be considered will differ, because it is based on the number of observatories that are near the station's proximity. So that is how this gridded maximum temperature database is concluded. Now let us move on to the next article. This article is about flash flood and landslips in Himachal. So is this in news because as you know, Himachal is a tourist place, and there are floods, flash floods and landslips, and because of this highways are blocked. So with this in regard, let us see what is a landslide, what is flash floods, and how do they take place. So what is a landslide? It is a movement of a mass rock or debris or a earth down a slope. So you can call it a type of mass wasting. So what is mass wasting? It is the downward movement of soil and rock under the direct influence of gravity. So there are 5 types of slope movement during landslide. What are they? Falls, topples, slides, spreads, and flows. So what causes landslides? Landslides are caused because when the slope movement occurs when forces acting downward. That is, why do forces act downward? Because that is mainly due to gravity. So this downward force exceeds the strength of the earth material that compose the slope. And mainly they are caused due to 3 major factors. One is geology, morphology, and human activity. So this is the landslide hazard zone of India. So the Himalayas are prone to this, and even the northeast, and here even Western Ghats are prone to landslides. So what does geology means? It refers to the characteristics of the material. So the earth or rock might be weak or fractured. Different layers may have different strengths and stiffness, so landslides will happen. And morphology refers to the structure of the land. So slopes that lose their vegetation to fire or drought are vulnerable to landslide, because why? Vegetation holds the soil in place, and without the trees, bushes, and other things, land will slide away. And as you know, human activity includes agriculture, construction, and all these things, and this increases landslide. So what are landslide prone areas in India? We saw that the Himalayan tract and the sub-Himalayan terrains of northeastern India, Western Ghats, Nilgiris in Tamil Nadu, Konkan areas are landslide prone. So what do we do to mitigate this? So construction and other development activities such as roads and dams that are prone to landslide, they should be restricted. So construction should not be allowed, and agriculture should be limited to valleys and areas with moderate slope. They should not be done on forest and hills, and development projects should not be allowed on large settlements that have high vulnerability zones, and large scale afforestation programs and construction of bunds, all those things should be done to reduce flow of water. And terrace farming should be encouraged in northeastern states, because there jumming, that is slash and burn, is still going on, so that should be changed. So what steps the government has taken? The Geological Survey of India has done a national landslide susceptibility mapping for 85% of the entire 4,22,000 square kilometer landslide prone in the country. So they have identified zones according to the propensity of the disaster. Next, what they are doing, they're improving early warning systems, monitoring, susceptibility zoning. So they are coming up with all these things to reduce landslides. Next, we'll see what are flash floods. So flash floods are sudden surges in water levels, generally during or following a very intense spell of rain. So they are highly localized events, and suddenly they'll peak, and everything will happen in less than 6 hours. So between rainfall and peak flood, this will happen. So the flood situation will worsen if the drainages are choked, or there are encroachments in the flow of water area. So how are they caused? They are caused by heavy rains, which are associated with thunderstorms, hurricanes, tropical storms, or meltwater. So in these areas, what will happen? Water will come from ice or ice sheets, snowfill, like that. So because of that, there will be flooding. Next, why they happen? Because flash floods can occur due to dam breaks or levee breaks or debris flow. So in volcano areas, how they occur? They occur, flash floods occur because whenever there are eruptions and if glaciers are melted by intense heat, then there will be flash floods. Then what are the causes? The rainfall intensity, location and distribution of rainfall, land use and topography, and vegetation types and growth or density, soil type, soil water. So all these things determine how quickly flash flooding may occur. So what we can do to reduce them? So instead of valleys, people should live in areas or on slopes with firm ground. So the land should not be weak. And in areas where there are ground fissures, steps should be taken to check the infiltration of rainwater and surface water. And check should be kept on construction work. So indiscriminate and unscientific construction work should not be allowed in these areas. Now let us move on to the next article. This article talks about global countries fighting inflation. So the Bank of International Settlement is telling there is inflation across the world, and it is telling how world countries should tackle it. So what is the world's central bank umbrella? It is the Bank for International Settlements. So what they are telling is world economy is now at a crucial point, and they are telling you should raise your interest rates. So inflation is very high, so they are telling raise your inflation rates. So next what they are telling, so in the last 18 months interest rates have been raised, but still inflation in many countries are very high, and borrowing costs also is increasing. So there are chances for banking collapses. So they are telling in top countries there are inflation is high and their borrowing also has increased. So banks will collapse. So just be careful. They are telling banks will collapse like 15 years ago. So what happened 15 years ago? It was the subprime crisis, right? Lehman Bank, Citibank, they all collapsed, right? So they're telling if you're not taking any action, banks will collapse. So what is the general manager telling? He's telling the global economy is at a critical juncture and strict challenges must be addressed. So he's telling don't pursue short-term growth. Monetary policy should now focus on price stability, and fiscal policy will come around it. Like that is telling. Next, what the BIS is telling, now there is a risk of inflationary psychology. So it's telling inflationary psychology is setting in, and there are a lot of rate hikes in Britain and Norway. Even the BIS did not expect this much rate hikes. So Britain and Norway has done a very good increase in rate hike, but uh, what is happening is it is not giving the the required result. So they are not able to tackle the problem. So why it is happening? Because this is a unique challenge. This is the first time, that is after World War, this is the first time inflation and widespread financial vulnerabilities, they are existing together. So this did not happen before. Next, what they are telling. So as long as you keep the inflation elevated, it will get stronger and prolonged. So for that, what you should do, you should have a required policy tightening. So they're telling banks will do it. So we are hopeful that banks will do all these things. Next, what they're telling, if the interest rates go to mid-90s level and the overall debt service increases, then what will happen? This will be a very catastrophic scenario, like that they're telling. So but the BIS is hopeful because central banks will do inflation control because that is their job, right? So they're telling they will focus on price stability, not an issue like that. The Bank of International Settlement is hopeful about it. So right now there's a banking crisis going on. So the world's central bank and other policymakers came to Portugal and they discussed about this issue. So they're telling the last few months have been turbulent because what happened in March and April, a lot of US regional banks failed, including Silicon Valley Bank. All these things failed. So this is very shocking because all this happened in spite of Credit Suisse being there, and this happened in Bank of International Settlements' own backyard. So what they found is historically 15% rate hike cycles trigger severe stress in the banking system because they have to lend, right? So if they are not able to lend, they'll not be able to make profits. So what is happening? Why is this happening? Because interest rates are going up, inflation is also increasing, and the housing prices have also been increasing sharply. So how much has it increased? It has increased to 40% of the private debt to GDP. Next, what they are telling, there is very high debt levels, a remarkable global inflation surge, and strong pandemic era increase in the house prices. So all these are leading to banking crisis. And next, what is happening? The cost of supporting aging population. So in the Western countries, aging population are increasing, and so this is costing 4 to 5% of the GDP in advanced and emerging market economies in the next 20 years. So if there is if they're not tightening, the government is not tightening its monetary policy, then what will happen? The debt will be pushed by 200% and 150% of GDP by 2050. So the report, so for this, what they have done, they've published a report, and they also have come up with a game-changing blueprint for an evolved financial system where central bank digital currencies and tokenized banking assets speed up and smarten up transactions and global trade. So finally, the central bank is telling now it is the policymakers to act, because we have told what we were supposed to tell. Now the government only should focus on. So he's saying unrealistic expectations have emerged since great financial crisis and COVID-19. So to balance this, he's telling monetary policy should be tightened and fiscal support will come around it. So the BS Bank of International Settlements feels that soft or softish landing should be there, because this rate rise without this rate rise should not trigger recession or banking crashes. Next, so analysts at the Bank of America have calculated that a whopping 470 interest rates have happened globally over the past 2 years, compared to the 1202 cuts in the financial crash. And what the US Federal Reserve has done, it has lifted its 500 basis point rate to near zero, and even the European Central Bank has hiked the Eurozone's 400 basis points, and many developing world economies also doing this. But what is happening? Bank of Japan was having the ultra loose monetary setting, but now they are feeling Bank of Japan also will come around. So right now the question is about what more needs to be done. What more companies should do to tackle the opportunity and boost profits, and even workers are now demanding higher wages because their living standards are eroding. So the bank is telling we are doing all this, we are focusing on all these things, gains will be there, we'll have to just go the last mile, that is a bit difficult, but is telling the central banks should now only focus on controlling inflation. Other than that, all things will fall in place. Like that, the Bank of International Settlements is telling. Now let us move on to the next article. This article is about developing new laws for digital India. So the MeitY minister and the ministry is asking for consultations to replace the 23-year-old IT Act, and in its place they are going to bring Digital India Bill. So why they are doing is because they want to upgrade the current law to tackle challenges such as user harm, competition, and misinformation. So the minister has said the draft will be out by end of June, because this is a very anticipated bill, because this is going to redefine how technology is going to be regulated, not just in India but globally as well. So what are the changes that are being proposed is categorization of digital intermediaries into distinct classes such as e-commerce players, social media companies, and search engines. Why is the present regime untenable? Because the IT Act defines an intermediary to include any entity between a user and the internet. And the IT rules even subclassify intermediaries into three main categories: who are the SMI, who are social media intermediaries, and SSMIs, significant social media intermediaries, and online gaming intermediaries. So who are SMIs? Are platforms that facilitate communication and sharing of information between users And who are SMIs? They are SMIs that have a large user base. So, but the definition of SMI is so broad that it brings under it even video communications, matrimonial websites, email. So it brings all of them under this SMI. And the rules also lay down very stringent obligations for intermediaries. So they are telling the intermediaries should respond within 72-hour timeline to resolve whatever the law enforcement agencies are telling, or even for a takedown request. And even ISPs, that is internet service providers, websites, e-commerce platforms, even they are treated like that. So the author here is giving an example about Microsoft Teams and Zoho. So they are also intermediaries, but clubbing them with others make no sense because they have a closed user base, and their information and all does not go viral. So the author is telling you don't treat these intermediaries like conventional social media platforms, because that will increase their cost of doing business, and it exposes them to greater liability, and you're not doing anything to reduce the risk in the internet. So far no country has taken a clear issue on these things, but right now the European Union's Digital Services Act is working on these areas. So what they are doing, they have given some exemptions, and they have created 3-tier intermediaries like hosting services, online platforms, and very large online platforms. So they'll have increasing legal obligations. And even Australia has created an eightfold classification system. So with that, what they're doing, they have a separate industry drafted code, and with that they'll govern categories such as social media platforms separately and search engines separately. And they are supposed to conduct risk assessment. How they do that? Based on potential for exposure to harmful content like child sexual abuse material or terrorism. So where should India focus? India right now can focus on granular product specific classification to improve accountability and safety online. But the author is telling that approach is not future proof. So technology keeps evolving, and the specific categories we define today may not work in the future. So what the author is telling, we need a classification framework that creates few defined categories, requires intermediaries to undertake risk assessment, and use that information to bucket them into relevant categories. So as far as possible, the goal of the government should be to minimize obligations on intermediaries, and ensure whatever the regulatory asks are proportionate to their ability and size. So what they can do, they can exempt MSMEs and caking and conduit services from obligations, and they need to distinguish communication services from other intermediaries. That is where users, there are communications where services where users interact, and there are search engines and online marketplace. So the government needs to distinguish between these two things. So because see this non-communication services, right, their risks are lower, the obligation so the obligation posed on them also should be lower only, but they can still be asked to have a grievance officer, cooperate with law enforcement, identify advertising, and they can take down problematic content within reasonable timelines. But intermediaries that offer communication services, what the other is telling, they should be asked to undertake risk assessment based on their active users, risks of harm, potential for going viral, and harmful content. But the largest communication services like Twitter, they can be required to adhere to special obligations like having India-based officers, setting up in-house grievance appellate mechanisms. Those mechanisms should have independent external stakeholders. So these things, they can be asked to be done. And there are other approaches to curb virality, such as circuit breakers. So what will do? This will slow down content. So this can also be considered. So for the proposed approach to be effective, what can be done? Metrics for risk assessment and appropriate thresholds would have to be defined and reviewed on periodic basis in consultation with industry players. So overall, what this will do, this framework will help establish accountability and online safety. At the same time, it reduces legal obligations for a large number of intermediaries. In doing so, what the government will do, it will create a good regulatory environment that will achieve government's policy, and at the same time it creates a safer internet ecosystem, which will then allow the businesses here to thrive. Let us now move on to previous year question. So the first question is about bills in Lok Sabha. A bill pending in the Lok Sabha lapses on its prorogation. No, this is wrong. It does not lapse. A bill pending in Rajya Sabha which has not been passed by the Lok Sabha shall not lapse on dissolution of the Lok Sabha. Yes, this is right. So the option is answer B, 2 only. Which of the following is our indicators used by the International Food Policy Research Institute to compute the Global Hunger Index report? So this is a easy question. Undernourishment, child stunting, child mortality. So the answer is C, all three. With reference to Li-Fi, which of the following statements are correct? It uses light as a medium for high-speed data transmission. Yes, that's true. It's a wireless technology and is several times faster than Wi-Fi. Yes, that is also true. So the answer is C, both 1 and 2. Which one of the following books of ancient India is the love story of the son of the founder of Sunga dynasty? The answer is Malavika Agnimitra. So that's all for the day. I hope you like the presentation. You can, if you like the presentation, you can subscribe the channel. You can comment and share it among your friends. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Telegram, and Facebook. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again tomorrow.